We're actually just welcome everybody. We're really looking forward to getting started with our fifth SOC masterclass. And just so in case some of you are new to CyberProof, we are a world leader in MDR and managed XDR services. So this is our fifth time that we're running a SOC masterclass, and we're really pleased to be joined by people from across the globe. I'm seeing there are participants from North America, from India, UK, Spain, Germany. So a good representation. So just give me a second. Thank you. Thank you. So our next session, we actually have three CyberProof security experts. We're going to be covering the topic, how threat hunting can transform your security operations. We have Aviel Golrochi, Robert Lowery, and Brian Janower. They will introduce themselves as they come in, and I'd say as they're coming in and sharing, please turn on your Please turn on your video and audio. Actually, I want to kick this off with a polling question to see, just to get an idea from the audience of what type of threat hunting activities are currently being deployed in your organization. So I'm going to launch the first polling question. So how many resources conduct threat hunting in your environment? So, some of you may have a dedicated team, some may have one or more threat hunters, some people may just have security analysts, and some may have none. So please add your vote, and we'll give it a couple more moments, and then I'll hand over to you, Aviel. Okay. All right, we're almost hit 50% voting. Anyone else want to add their vote here? Okay. All right, so here's, we'll share the results, some interesting results here. So 21% have a whole team, 14% one or more threat hunters. Almost half of people here are using security analysts to do threat hunting, and almost 20%, 19, don't have any threat hunting capability. So I'm going to pass this over to you, Aviel. Any thoughts on the poll?
Interesting results, and I think part of our slides are definitely going to aim for all of these parts of the answers. And I think once we can show how CyberProof are handling the methodology and some of the demos, it can help our audience to get some points, to get some tips out of this.
Cool. So please, if I think you have some slides to present, so please go ahead and share your screen.
Yes, let me know when you can see my screen. Awesome. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. Today we're going to talk about how threat hunting can transform your security operation as a human-based detection. Here with me, as Howard mentioned, Robert and Brian as well. They are going to demonstrate two demos later on. But first, I'll start a little bit about myself and some of the methodology that we use in CyberProof. So nice to meet you. My name is Aviel. I'm the incident response and the threat hunting team leader in CyberProof. I have 7 years of experience in cybersecurity industry. Actually, I'm fascinated lately by the impact of meditation on body and mind connection. It gave me a huge impact on my life. And actually, I'm fingers crossed for cryptocurrency to take over the finance world. So looking forward to that. What we are going to have today is a little bit about threat hunting. What does it mean? Why do we need that? And some common weaknesses of the companies that we have identified, and how CyberProof strengths are coming to aid in this situation. And then I'm going to give some higher level of the methodology that we are using in CyberProof for the managed advanced threat hunting service, to give a little bit of a glimpse of what we do within the team for our customers. And then we will have two demos. The first led by Robert to show how Jupyter is being used in our day-to-day job in order to hunt for threats. And the second demo would be led by Brian to demonstrate how we are leveraging malware analysis to enhance our hunting capabilities. So let's start with a quick introduction and why do we need basically threat hunting. So as you can see here in this diagram, starting at T1, the initial compromise, the initial access of threat actors within the environment, intelligence report shows that in average 6 months, the threat actors can be resident within the environment without being detected. This huge detection gap that we have here is very worried, for the cybersecurity from a security perspective. And this is when the cybersecurity actually shifted their minds, and we started to conduct some proactive approach. It's not coming to replace the regular SOC activities, of course. All of the rest of the services are in place and needed, but this is a complementary proactive approach. But our hunters basically operates under the assumption that the adversaries are already infiltrated the environment. I mean, we're practically assuming, by the hypothesis, we are assuming that the threat actors are there. We are using our technical knowledge, security knowledge, and of course the operating system essentials about environments to understand what is right and what is wrong in networking endpoint. And in a way, we are following a human-based detection processes. I mean, we're not relying on alerts from other security tools. We can take it as a lead, but eventually what we are doing in our day-to-day core job is to get access to customers' data, raw data within SIEM and EDR, and I'll explain about this in a few slides. And our role is to explore all of the logs and to pivot from one data source to another, and to try to seek for infection evidence. This is our day-to-day activities. And the main reason is to pinpoint malicious activity that are hidden within the network, I mean, that are under the radar. Sometimes, I mean, we are not only finding threats, malwares, it could be also IT misconfiguration, it could be bad practices. So it's not all about a malware communicating or a threat actor that conducts, the actual impact. It's also some bad practices that companies have that might possess a threat to the environment later on. So moving forward, I want to talk about some common weaknesses that we have identified in some of the companies. So we are highly familiar with threat actors, and they are highly skilled. All of the threats are being evolved from time to time, and there was a time frame in the past that we believe that the antiviruses might be enough, or EDR might be enough. Now we are seeing that threat actors are bypassing EDR, bypassing security controls. And this actually is a very concerning element of the security posture, because we are relying on tools to detect them, but they are, bypassing the security tools. So, and of course, migrating to the cloud open a new attack surface completely, and most of the companies are moving to the cloud. So it gives the threat actors a lot of room to attack. So our team actually conducts threat research on new techniques, new campaigns that are out there, and we are developing innovative methods for detection. We have several examples. Here, we're going to demonstrate some of them. Another common weakness that we have identified is a lack of resource, and I think, Howard, you mentioned this in the survey at the beginning of this session, that some of the security teams do not have a dedicated threat hunter to conduct the proactive approach on a regular basis. Some of the companies are using, a security analyst or not conducting threat hunting at all. And this is, is a part missing in this puzzle that we need to move forward to this proactive approach. So CyberProof can offer a dedicated team that its primary goal is basically to proactively hunt for those indicator of threats. I mean, the entire work of this team is to grab a threat, to research it completely within our internal labs, and then to come up with a hunting hypothesis and the hunting workflows to address this threat from top to bottom. Another element of weakness that we have identified is the lack of visibility. Some of the companies are not providing enough logs into the scene, or they do not have complete coverage of EDR in their environment, and this might impact not only hunting, by the way, it can impact also detection rules and basically detecting those threats. So what the CyberProof can offer is basically visibility into this coverage, into this log coverage, to understand what log sources are mandatory and what log sources are required, as an addition, as an extra enrichment. And based on these dashboards, it can actually help our customer to understand what are the type of log sources that they have, and based on that, which hunts we are able to conduct, and also vice versa, because if you're not providing a DNS logs, we are not able to conduct hunts on DNS. So this actually helps our customers to increase the visibility. Another point is the hunts usually are not being conducted as a structured program. I mean, security analysts are, could get lost in the endless hypothesis and not knowing where to stop, or not knowing what lead they can grab as the first lead. So our team actually draws lead from many resources. It can be incident from other companies that we are understanding what happened in this incident, and we are hunting for this specific case also in other customers. It could be dark web activity, prioritizing the MITRE technique. And all these structured methodology actually helps us to come with our knowledge with a very structured program of, we know what we would like to hunt for, and we are customizing. I'll talk about it in a second. We are customizing our methodology to the companies, to the environment, basically, and then we know what we are aiming to hunt, what are the hypotheses, how we are about to do it, and what we need if we are going back to the visibility and the log collection, and what we need in order to hunt for these activities. Moving forward to some of the CyberProof strengths, here are the added value of the service. So let's start with the first one, the baselines. At the beginning of the service, we are creating, at the beginning, and of course it continues to enrich itself. We are creating a baseline. It can helpfully, it can help us to understand about the environmental scenario. What is okay in the environment, what is wrong, what is the network baseline, what is the endpoint baseline, and by that later on to understand what considers to be anomaly. Of course, that we have also whitelist that we keep updating from time to time. Another strength that CyberProof have is that this service is a full and up-to-date managed service. That means the team grab a threat, research it completely, and provide hunting workflows dedicated to that. And it happens, as a managed service. I mean, customer just need to grant us access to SIEM and EDR, basically. We don't need, some other help from the customer. Another element is the holistic approach, and this is the approach that CyberProof takes in general. We would like to our service to interact with all of the services and to get leads from the CTI service, from the detection and response service, from the SIEM service, to work in collaborative way to provide an holistic methodology for our customers. And this takes me to the next point of transparency. Of course, our work, even though that is happening, completely fully managed by CyberProof, we are still showing the customer a dashboard, a management dashboard, to reflect to them all of the hunting efforts, all of the findings that we have found, some security recommendation, of course, KPIs, to tell them what we are focused on, what we are about to focus in the next quarter, in the next 6 months, and what are the results so far that we have found in the environment. And one last thing that I did mention before is the customization. I mean, we would like to interview our customers to get to know them, to understand the environment, to understand what they have identified as a security gaps, because we are here, and this team is actually, proactively looking for threats. So we would like to engage with the customer to understand where they are lacking security controls, and then we are pinpointing exactly these areas. So if we are looking at the managed service, from a higher perspective, we can see a lot of moving parts that I would like to go over one by one. Let's start with from bottom to top. We have a lot of leads that we can take and create a hunting workflows based on that. So I mentioned before, it could be an incident that comes from another customer. We are grabbing this incident, understanding what happened there, and then we are hunting for other customers as well. It could be internal or external intelligence report about new trend, new threats, new technique, new campaign. We are grabbing this report. We are investigating this threat within our labs, and we are coming up with a package. These are the packages that in a second I'll talk about the hunting catalog, and we are creating the hunting package for this specific threat. Of course, we are prioritizing all of the MITRE techniques. We are identifying what would be the most used techniques by most of the threat actors. It could be, based on a sector. If we have a gas and oil client, client that comes from a gas and oil sector, we can pinpoint the MITRE techniques that is dedicated just for this sector, or we can do it in cross sectors. But eventually we are prioritizing the MITRE technique to know what to hunt for. This is the program that we are structuring for customers. And also we are using some malware analysis on the downloaded samples from VirusTotal. We are understanding what is going on, out there in the wild. We are grabbing the malware and investigating it within our labs, and then we are moving forward with creating this package dedicated for this malware. All of these leads are enhancing our hunting catalog, and starting from there, the hunters can grab exactly a specific package, just to grab it from the catalog and run the hunting queries in our client's environment. So we have a lot of type of hunts. It could be intelligence hunts, that we are using Jupyter for that. It could be an automated schedule hunts that we do. It could be customized. But eventually, if you can see at the top of this diagram, basically the customer just need to provide us access to SIEM ADR or data lake, and they're getting all of these full managed service that happens in the background, reflecting all of the findings and the effort in this service management. And one last thing, as we go along, I did mention the whitelist and the baselines. The hunters are constantly updating those baselines and whitelists just to make sure that we are understanding what is okay and what is wrong in this environment. By that, we are learning how to move forward in what to hunt for later on. So I'd like to share, to move forward to these two demos that we have here today. So the first demo that we are about to have, as I mentioned, is a Jupyter by Robert. He's going to take the lead on that. And the second demo is going to be presented by Brian for malware analysis and how we're leveraging malware analysis for our hunting activities. So I guess, Rob, the stage is yours.
Cool. Thanks, Aviel. It looks like my SOC masterclass background is back to front as well. So hopefully that's not a sign of things to come.
So Rob, it's okay when it flips once it gets from your screen to us. So
oh really? So you see it normal? Ah,
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Layer 8 issue then. So a little bit about me. So experienced threat hunter. So I'm the security monitoring detection lead for Middle Europe for a customer of CyberProof. And here's a picture of me squinting on a hike for things that I like to do. So a bit about myself. So I did my master's in cybersecurity. I worked for UK MSP, which is kind of known for government and financial organizations. I was basically a ticket monkey to start off with, and then progressed into SIEM administration and detection engineering. Then I left to join the London Stock Exchange group, where I mainly worked on CTI, threat hunting, the occasional DFIR workload combined with more detection engineering, basically. And now I work at CyberProof, where I'm contracted out to a single client as a security monitoring detection lead for Middle Europe, where I mainly do detection engineering and threat hunting, and kind of an escalation point for more junior analysts. So, hang on. Yeah. So basically, the aims of this presentation is to explain why we use Jupyter notebooks, to go over a real-world threat actor intrusion incident response investigation using a Jupyter notebook, and then show how this combined with like open source intelligence can build a hypothesis to hunt and detect IceID at scale across multiple customers. Apologies if you can hear my dog. He should shut up in a minute.
It's okay.
So when it comes to threat hunting, how many times have you seen an analyst with a giant OneNote or a conference page filled with queries for everyone to just periodically run, kind of when they feel like it, or they see a slightly different variation of a TTP, they then analyze that output only to do the same thing again with minimal tuning and exclusions taking place, let alone kind of any anomaly detection or baselining of their environment. It's also not uncommon to see little documentation of how to analyze the output. So, if a team's diverse from a technical perspective, it's easy for an experienced analyst to say, look for weird child processes from office applications, but how do you define what that looks like in an environment at scale? When a more junior analyst finds something, how do they determine whether it's a poorly designed macro for an accountant or HR or a good phishing document? And these are all the kind of things that we need to take into account. I found Jupyter notebooks a good way to deal with those issues. Those issues get even more complex in the MSP space, where different analysts rely on different tools to build threat hunting queries for clients. Clients have different EDRs, different SIMs. Jupyter notebooks addresses these issues for me. So start with data persistence. So we can make sure that every query and hunt that is built by an experienced analyst can be replicated by unexperienced analysts, providing we document how to analyze the output directly within Jupyter notebooks. We can also keep the data collection that we do past the 7-day retention period, or 30 days for, you know, most EDR vendors. This enables us to build stronger baselines and, you know, sort of greater anomaly-based detection. Data normalization. So we can rename fields and normalize data. So meaning a single notebook can be used to query multiple EDRs all at once, making it much easier to scale. So that kind of free time that we get allows us to build more advanced queries in a shorter time frame. So we can, instead of having to build the queries in multiple languages, wait for the data to be returned back, all of this can be automated directly within Jupyter notebooks. It also gives us the ability to join with external data. So we could link up with ServiceNow, for example, and we could look at a user's job title for contextualization. So like a HR person running a weird PowerShell command versus a developer. So we can also do sophisticated data processing, machine learning, and visualization. Basically fancy graphs. The machine learning stuff's kind of coming, but isn't there yet, full disclosure. And with the document standardization, it kind of allows all analysts to build detections from a single notebook, which, you know, is just much more useful, I think. And it also enables us to like investigate the gray areas. So I'm sure you're aware of it, but typically EDR vendors have to find a balance between detecting malicious activity and not spamming the SOC with false positives. So they tend to lean towards the side of trigger an alert if something is likely to be malicious, meaning that if an attacker follows good OPSEC, they may remain undetected in your environment. So because we collect raw EDR telemetry directly within our Jupyter notebooks, this enables us to look at that and identify things that are suspicious specific to an environment, which might not necessarily trigger an alert. So that's quite a useful thing to be able to do. I won't spend too much time going over the full features of this notebook, but basically it's the stuff you typically expect for a sort of triage notebook. So it looks for low-bus process execution, suspicious parent-child process relationships, common recon activity like net, NL test, WMRC, suspicious module loads like CLR.dll, system management automation, that type of stuff. Various signs of persistence like auto start entry points, services, scheduled tasks, process injection, probably some other stuff as well, which I can't remember. So let's go over IceID. So IceID is a banking Trojan, which allows attackers to, you know, steal banking credentials originally. Mainly targets businesses and steals payment information. The second variant of IceID has been significantly reworked, and it's much more modular. This makes it much harder to detect, you know, from sort of basic AV and EDR standpoint, because of, you know, it's a much smaller footprint. A lot of the activity is done directly in memory. It's, you know, you've probably seen it if you monitor emails, you've seen the ISO files coming your way. It's typically delivered by common initial access methods, phishing, Office macros, ISO zips. And yeah, because that is good at bypassing EDR and AV for a commodity malware. You know, it's not amazing, but for commodity, it's good. So this is an example of the output from our triage hunt. So you can see here we've observed suspicious run DLL 32 activity. So it's not normal for run DLL command line to be obfuscated in that way, as you can see, especially when you can see file types such as PNG being treated like executables. Fairly anomalous. If you look down to the user writable paths, you can see a DLL being run in a user's app data directory. You know, that's anomalous, but not necessarily malicious. However, when it's present on a small subset of hosts in a large environment, it can become something to look at. And this way, you know, we can kind of look at anomaly detections of what DLLs are present in app data typically, what users are associated with it, et cetera, et cetera. We can build up more context on a host. Also, the string license.dat is like a known malware string. So, you know, that's a string of interest that we want to look at. So here we can look at more findings that we've observed. So we've observed WMRC being used to query the AV installed on a host. This is typically done in the kind of post-exploitation stage to determine the next steps of intrusion. Similar to CHCP, that queries what language is installed on the host. That's also used to determine sort of further intrusion steps. Certain languages present on the host means that attackers will stop infecting them further. And you can also see they've used net to like net and NL test to query a lot of stuff that is fairly anomalous in your environment. So looking for, all domain admins, that type of stuff. So here we can see that run DLL was the parent process spawning lots of child processes. So this is the suspicious parent-child process relationship that automatically highlighted. So these are considered suspicious, but they weren't outright alerted on via the EDR. So the reason run DLL has been used for this is it was just a default spawn to process for the beacon, basically for Cobalt Strike. We can also see more specific IceID stuff. So this process injection activity that we automatically detected was basically, an IceID method to steal credentials, cookies, and saved information in browsers. It also has the ability to do web injections, where it modifies various website content directly via JavaScript, which is pretty cool. And not an exciting persistence mechanism, to be fair. You can see here it's just using run DLL to execute a DLL in app data via an auto start entry point key. It's a default run key. So what have we seen? So we've seen CHCP, NET, NLTest, WMIC being used in this intrusion. We've also seen obfuscation characters present in the command line. We can build a query to look for this. We can build a query to look for those process executions for NET, NLTest, etc. We've seen run DLL spawning all the things in the world. We can build a query to detect this. We've also seen process injection from run DLL into browser processes. This is also something we could detect through sort of further open source intelligence based off the hash files afterwards. We also discovered that they were using ISO images. We also determined that phishing macros are a fairly, sort of known intrusion infection method, for them. So we can look for process execution from non-C drives, since we know that ISO is mounted to a separate drive. We could look for child processes of Office applications. We can look for persistence using run DLL. So yeah, essentially that's it. This is a solid base for us to build a hunt from. So we can develop a Jupyter notebook to hunt for this activity. And once we've run it, we can sort of set it up. We can run it ad hoc whenever we want in an automated way. You develop baselines and look for deviations of what's normal, basically. So yeah, we can use that to detect threats. If you're worried about the outcome of this incident, it was caught and remediated at this point before any further post-exploitation stuff occurred. It also leads us nicely into our next segment from Brian, because the Cobalt Strike binary dropped after IceID was reverse engineered to obtain the beacon configuration, which is also added to the threat hunting by supplying us with sort of crucial information such as the spawn to processes, process injection allocation type features to Cobalt Strike, so we could automatically detect that stuff as well. So that's it. From here, I'll hand you over to Brian.
Thanks, Rob. That was great. Thank you. So Brian, are you going to share screen? Great.
Hello guys, can you hear me well? Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you, Aviel, thank you, Robert, and hello everybody. I'm Brian. In this part, I will show you how we enhance our hunting activity with using malware analysis. So as I said, I am Brian. I've been doing threat hunting for the last 3 years. I really enjoy doing malware analysis during the weekends. And you guessed right, I am Argentinian. On the right, you can see me on the 18th of December, celebrating that we won the World Cup with my dog Maple. She was really excited during the final match. You can see also on her face, she was a little bit shocked for the winning, but now we are both okay. So this is the agenda for this part. I will cover the following topics: common challenges while creating hunting queries. Then I will present you our solution, which is hunting guided by malware analysis. We will do a quick overview of malware analysis approaches and talk about some malware artifacts that are pieces of information that we can extract and use for our hunting activity. I will also cover our method, which is the life cycle of hunting focused malware analysis. And I will be sharing with you some use cases, some examples of how and when malware analysis comes handy in the hunting process. And also the last minutes, we will go over your questions. So first, the threat landscape is huge. We witness every day a new method or a new technique that can be used by the threat actors. Therefore, it is challenging to stay relevant and build efficient queries because there are lots of ways to manipulate and trick the native operation system and also native applications. Second, especially when we are dealing with new techniques or new tools, it's often the case that there is limited research outside and there is no information available. So we have to set up our labs and simulate the attack workflow or the technique that is used just to understand how the operation system is manipulated, what is our visibility, what we can see and what we can learn. And third, there are lots of tools like MITRE ATT&CK matrix that we all know, but they are very generalized. For example, the MITRE ATT&CK shows all the attack stages, but there is no guideline on how to prioritize your efforts, which stage you have to look, which stage or technique has a bigger impact for your organization. So how do you overcome these challenges? One of our solutions is doing malware analysis and to guide our hunting efforts and to be more efficient and focused. So let's do a quick overview of malware analysis approaches. There are basically 3 approaches for malware analysis: static analysis, dynamic analysis, and reverse engineering. Static analysis is investigating the file for signs of malicious intent, but without executing the program, without executing the malware. For example, in static analysis, we can extract IOCs such as IP strings that we can use for URL rules, domain names, file hash, etc. In dynamic analysis is basically executing the malware or the malicious program in a secure environment to see or to watch how the malware is interacting with our machine, to see what are the actions that the malware is doing. And also sometimes we would like to interact with the machine doing the execution to see how the malware acts. And the last approach, of course, is doing full reverse engineering. And it is a more advanced technique that involves disassembling the program or decompiling the malware. And through this process, we can look at what the malware is doing, how it impacts our system, what are the API calls or system calls that the malware is doing. And basically, by involving malware analysis, we can be much more efficient and not only detect the malware or detect the malicious activity, but also we can reveal the full risk or the full capabilities of the malware and also provide you remediation and mitigation recommendations based on what we saw. So this is the life cycle of the process, and this is basically our method. So first and foremost, rather than the traditional hunting that starts with writing a hypothesis, with this approach, we will start first by identifying the top malware threat, and then we will have to prioritize them. So how we do it? We firstly look into the customer sector. For example, the customer sector is telecom, so some questions that we will ask ourselves and work with the CTI team to answer them is who is targeting the telecom companies, who is targeting the telecom sector, what are the most used techniques that were seen. Maybe there is a specific malware or specific technique that is most used. And CTI will help us answering those questions to prioritize, but we also take into consideration the customer environment. Which operation system is the customer mostly using? Is it Linux, Windows, macOS? And does he has servers exposed? What are the most concerning things from the customer side? So after prioritizing the malwares, we will start collecting some samples from VirusTotal or other external feeds. And we will start performing malware analysis first by static analysis, dynamic analysis, and if needed, reversing. And by doing that, we can identify the key techniques and behavior of certain malwares. So according to the available information, we will start crafting our anti-queries, deploy those queries into our demo environments using different TDR tools and SIEM tools to see how and what we can see. And after crafting those hunting queries, we will test them and tune it. So basically, this is the life cycle. This chart shows some examples of what information we can gather by doing malware analysis. So if we starting by network communication, you all know that network logs usually contains a lot of information, and sometimes it feels like looking for a needle in a haystack. So by looking into the malware, we can focus and learn what protocol is the malware using, which port is the malware using for communicating, what process is supposed to communicate. If we are talking about file creation and deletion, which files dropped into the hard disk, are any files maybe deleted, removed, common execution, what is the actual threat or potential risk of the malware, what are the capabilities of the malware. If we are talking about persistence, so does the malware leave a backdoor? Does it manipulate maybe a registry key for persistence? Process injection, maybe we don't have to look specific at the at one process. Maybe we should look at another process because our malware is injecting code into the second process. So these are things that we can learn and we should learn by doing malware analysis. Registry modification, you all know registries where we can configure the operation system. So maybe does the malware manipulates or changes some security settings. Maybe the malware is disabling security tools to Windows Defender, for example. Does it pull out credentials? Does the malware enabling RDP? So these are many questions that we can ask and answer them by doing malware analysis. So let's go through some use cases, some examples. So for the first example, we have a Lokibot info stealer. In this picture, you can see the highlighted text. It shows the command line that was executed during that specific execution. That command line could be used as an input for a hunting query. However, it won't be good enough. And why it's not good enough? Because we'll detect only this specific execution. This log shows only one execution, but after reversing the malware, reversing the file, we can see that there are several execution options for that malware. And a better query, for example, would be adding these export functions, these names to the query. So by doing that, we are increasing the chances to detect Lokibot execution, since any of these export functions or names of the functions can be used to execute the malware. So again, one log against doing malware analysis. In this case, what we have seen here is a Regis VR32 executed with a randomly generated DLL name. Creating a query based on the command line is not enough in this case. So we started to investigate how we can detect this immuted variant based on behavior. And as you can see, there is a floating model named YDLL. Floating basically means that the model doesn't belonged to the process, but it was injected to the memory section of the process. So later we started performing malware analysis to understand how the injection is done and how can we detect that behavior. With Process Hacker, we identify the memory section that the code is injected with RWX permissions that these are read, write, and execute. And you can see that there in that specific section inside, there is an MZ file. MZ file basically means executable or a module of DLL. And later by disassembling the code, disassembling the MZ file, the code showed that in this specific emotet wave, the module name is hard-coded as y.dll and will always be followed with the export function named DLL register server. For the last example, I want to talk about Snake Keylogger. So our job as threat hunter is not only detect the malicious activity, but also provide you recommendations what to do after the infection, maybe how to mitigate the threat, how to recover from what happened to the infected host. So in this example, by doing malware analysis, we can reveal the full potential risk of the malware, right? This image shows that the malware has a keylogger functionality. And obviously, it's part of the keylogger's malware family. Set Windows hook, key down events, and things like that, of course. In this image, we can learn that the malware has screenshot theft capabilities. The malware takes a screenshot of the entire screen, stores the screenshot in Snake Keylogger directory that you will create. After taking the screenshot, the malware will first exfiltrate the screenshot and then delete the file. In this image, we can learn that the malware has also capabilities of clipboard data theft. And we can also learn that all your information stored in any of Gecko-based browsers, such as Mozilla Firefox, is at risk. And so based on what we see, we will give you proper recommendations and be very specific on what you have to do and how you can recover from the infection. So that's it for my part. Howard?
Thank you, Brian. That was great, and we have gone over by a couple of minutes. So maybe let's just take one question, and then we'll wrap up. I think this one probably maybe Aviel, you'll take it. So, what's the best tip for creating a threat hunting model program for your environment? What would be your best takeaway for everyone?
So I think, first of all, it's really important, it's really crucial to get to know the environment, because once the threat actors are within the environment, they're starting to have some reconnaissance and to understand where they have landed. But we have the advantage as the defensive side, we have the advantage of getting to know the environment, whether you are a CISO or your security teams. It's best for you to get to know the environment and try to think out of the box and try to explore the logs. I think it can bring you a lot of value to explore the logs, not only by relying on EDR or SIEM alerts. Keep that aside. This is a good lead, but try to explore the logs by your own. And while you're knowing what is okay and what is wrong, as you move along, you will see what is happening in the environment that haven't been detected. And maybe one last thing is collaborate with intelligence, collaborate with other team members around you to understand what you can leverage as a content hypothesis.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aviel, Robert, and Brian. That was a great session. Appreciate your time.